The thing about xenoarchaeological conferences was that they attracted exactly the sort of beings who believed intelligence could be measured by the length of one's credentials and the obscurity of one's research topics. Which explained why Dr. Kestrel Vance found herself surrounded by creatures who had spent centuries studying dust particles from dead worlds, all of them radiating the particular smugness that came with never having been genuinely surprised by anything. Station Meridian 7's main auditorium buzzed. Not literally, though the Vishari delegation did produce an annoying harmonic whenever they disagreed with something. The real buzzing came from the translation matrices working overtime to convert academic pretension into 17 different languages simultaneously. Vance adjusted her presentation notes and wondered, not for the first time, why she'd bothered coming to this intellectual circus. Over 97% of viewers here are watching without subscribing. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button right now and join the journey. Every click helps us grow stronger, and you'll never miss the next epic story. The floor recognizes Dr. Kestrel Vance of the Terran Archaeological Institute, announced conference chair Yelandra, her voice carrying that particular tone reserved for announcing the opening act at an execution. The Altarian's crystalline features reflected the auditorium lights in patterns that somehow managed to convey disapproval without a single facial muscle moving. Vance stood, ignoring the ripple of what could generously be called interest from the assembled academics. More accurately, it was the sort of attention usually reserved for traffic accidents or particularly gruesome medical procedures. "Colleagues," she began, her voice cutting through the multilingual murmur. "I'm here to discuss the technological artifacts commonly attributed to the lost precursors of the Andorian Belt." Professor Zektharan of the Hegemony Institute raised one of his four arms. The Cromlech's exoskeleton chittered with what his species considered scholarly enthusiasm, but which reminded Vance of fingernails on a blackboard. "Dr. Vance, surely you're not suggesting these artifacts are anything but clear examples of precursor engineering? The mathematical elegance alone—" "Mathematical elegance," Vance interrupted, "is a funny thing to mention considering the base 10 number system embedded in their quantum matrices." The auditorium fell silent. Even the Vishari stopped their harmonizing. "Base 10, she continued, is remarkably rare among galactic civilizations. Most species develop mathematical frameworks based on their primary appendage count or sensory array configurations. Base 10 suggests a species with 10 primary manipulators, like, say, fingers." Dr. Renthak of the Corvani Observatory leaned forward, his serpentine neck extending with what might have been curiosity or hunger. "Are you suggesting—" "I'm suggesting," Vance said, advancing her first hologram, "that we've been looking at this backward. These aren't artifacts from some mysterious precursor race. They're human. The silence that followed was the kind that usually preceded, either applause or executions. In this case, Vance suspected it might be both. "Preposterous," Zektharan declared, his mandibles clicking in what passed for academic outrage among his people. "Humans are barely 1,000 years into space travel. These artifacts predate your species' first interstellar flight by millennia." "Do they?" Vance asked, enjoying the way the question hung in the recycled air. "Or do they predate our first recorded interstellar flight?" She triggered the next hologram, displaying a three-dimensional map of artifact distribution across 17 systems. Notice the pattern. The artifacts don't cluster around major trade routes or obvious strategic locations. They follow a different logic entirely, one that suggests colonial expansion by a species that valued resource diversity and defensive positioning over pure commercial advantage. "Colonial expansion requires infrastructure," Professor Veltar of the Academic Council interjected. The Zenthari's voice carried the weight of someone who had never been wrong about anything, and didn't intend to start now. "Where are the ships?" The communication networks? The supply chains? Excellent question, Vance replied. Where indeed? Unless, of course, this hypothetical species was particularly good at integration, at blending in, at becoming so thoroughly absorbed into existing civilizations that they left barely a trace. The Vishari delegation resumed their harmonizing, this time in a distinctly agitated key. Yolandra's crystalline surface flickered with patterns that suggested she was reconsidering her decision to allow this presentation. Zektheron rose to his full, imposing height, which was considerable, considering the Cromlech were built like mobile siege weapons. Dr. Vance, with all due respect to your creative interpretation, you're asking us to believe that an entire human diaspora simply vanished into the galactic population without leaving any significant historical record. Not vanished, Vance corrected. Integrated, successfully, completely. So successfully that even their descendants forgot where they came from. That's impossible, Zektheron said, his tone carrying the finality of someone pronouncing a universal constant. A human can't rewrite history. Vance smiled. It was the sort of smile that had, throughout human history, preceded a great many unpleasant surprises for a great many overconfident individuals. Can't we? She asked, advancing to her final hologram. Then perhaps you can explain why the quantum resonance signatures in these ancient alien artifacts match the brainwave patterns of modern humans. Why their interface protocols respond specifically to human neural architecture. Why their power sources activate only when touched by beings with human-compatible biometric markers. The auditorium erupted. 17 species began talking, arguing, and in several cases, what could only be described as academic screeching, all at once. The translation matrices overloaded twice, producing brief moments where everyone was speaking in the same metallic monotone. Through the chaos, Zektheron's voice cut like a blade. Even if your wild theories had merit, which they don't, you have no proof, no documentation, no verifiable records. Vance gathered her materials with the deliberate calm of someone who held several particularly explosive cards and was looking forward to playing them. Professor Zektheron, I appreciate your skepticism. Truly, it's the mark of a careful scholar. She paused at the edge of the speaking platform, looking back at the assembly of the galaxy's finest academic minds, all of them radiating various species expressions of outrage, confusion, and intellectual superiority. I'll be presenting my full documentation to the Galactic Historical Preservation Committee next week, she announced. I think you'll find it illuminating. As she left the auditorium, Vance could hear the academic chaos reaching new heights behind her. Someone, it sounded like Dr. Renthak, was demanding an immediate review of her credentials. Another voice, possibly Veltar, was calling for her research to be examined by a panel of real xenoarchaeologists. The narrator, if such an entity could be said to exist in this particular corner of space-time, might have observed that the most dangerous thing in the universe wasn't a black hole or a gamma-ray burst, or even a bureaucrat with unlimited authority. It was a human with documentation, a theory, and absolutely nothing left to lose. Vance smiled again as the auditorium doors sealed behind her. Next week's presentation was going to be memorable indeed. The Contrarian drifted in the shadow of Meridian 7's docking ring, its hull scarred from years of archaeological expeditions to places that most sensible beings avoided. Inside, Dr. Kestrel Vance sat surrounded by holographic displays that painted her cramped research lab in shifting blues and golds, each projection representing decades of painstaking investigation. Well, that went about as expected, she muttered, pulling up the first data stream. Nothing like telling a room full of experts they've been catastrophically wrong for centuries to make friends. You do realize, came a voice from the lab's central AI core, that your presentation style has all the diplomatic finesse of a plasma torpedo? Vance glanced at the speaker grill where her artificial companion, Felix, forensic evidence logic integration expert, resided in whatever passed for comfort in digital existence. Since when did you develop opinions about my social skills? Since you programmed me to analyze behavioral patterns, your approach to academic discourse shows a remarkable consistency with historical human military tactics, specifically the shock and awe doctrine. At least someone appreciates my methodology. Vance activated the first archaeological file, watching as three-dimensional models of artifact fragments rotated slowly in the air. Besides, subtlety never got anyone tenure. The fragments belonged to what the Corvani had designated Object Classification 47 Alpha, a piece of quantum processing equipment recovered from the ruins on Kepler 442b. According to official records, it represented technology far beyond anything the local civilization should have possessed. Run the molecular analysis again, Vance instructed. Focus on the metallurgical composition. Felix's response carried what could only be described as electronic smugness. Already done. The alloy contains trace elements of terrestrial origin, specifically isotopic signatures matching Earth's northern hemisphere, circa 2847. 200 years before official first contact with the Corvani. Technically, first recorded contact. Your species has always been remarkably bad at keeping accurate historical records when it comes to inconvenient timelines. Vance moved to the next display, where linguistic analysis scrolled past in cascading columns of text. What about the inscription fragments from the Helix Nebula sites? Even better. The syntax patterns match early colonial English, but with phonetic drift suggesting approximately 4 centuries of linguistic evolution in isolation, plus loanwords from at least 6 different alien languages. Show me the cultural integration markers. The hologram shifted, displaying a complex web of interconnected data points. Marriage records from 17 different systems, property transfers, citizenship applications, all bearing human names that had been filed under naturalized alien residents in various planetary databases. The Chen family on Rigel 7, Felix noted, highlighting one particular thread. Records show them arriving as refugees from a failed colony ship in 2901. 3 generations later, their descendants were leading the Planetary Engineering Council that built the gravity manipulation systems we found there. Gravity manipulation systems that only respond to human neural patterns. Precisely. Though apparently nobody bothered to mention that particular detail in the official reports. Vance leaned back in her chair, studying the growing web of evidence. It's brilliant, really. Show up as refugees, integrate completely, contribute to local technology development, then watch as your own innovations get attributed to mysterious ancient aliens. Your species has always excelled at camouflage, though usually for less benevolent purposes. The next file contained communication logs from Vance's network of contacts across the galaxy. Researchers, archivists, and amateur historians who had noticed similar anomalies in their own work, but lacked the resources or institutional backing to pursue them. Dr. Yikta of the Centauri Archaeological Survey had discovered human genetic markers in supposedly alien grave sites. Professor Nilak from the Vegan University had found colonial-era human literature in the ruins of a civilization that predated human space travel by centuries. Even more intriguingly, Commander Zelf of the Rim Fleet had reported that several ancient alien derelicts responded to human access codes. They're all connected, Vance mused, watching the data streams merge into coherent patterns. Every major technological leap attributed to precursor influence, every mysterious ancient site that doesn't quite fit the established timeline, there's human fingerprints all over it. metaphorically speaking, though in several cases, literally as well. Vance called up the pièce de résistance, the quantum archaeological scans from the Terminus system. The readings showed clear evidence of human habitation dating back nearly 600 years, including the remains of what appeared to be a major colonial infrastructure project. "Look at this," she said, highlighting the architectural analysis. "Standard colonial authority building codes, down to the emergency exit specifications. Somebody built a significant settlement there, then apparently abandoned it. Or integrated so completely into the local population that maintaining separate human settlements became unnecessary. The ultimate evolutionary adaptation. Don't fight the environment. Become part of it so completely that you disappear." Felix's voice carried a note of what might have been admiration. "Your species managed to colonize half the galaxy while simultaneously erasing all evidence of having done so. It's either the greatest intelligence operation in galactic history or the most successful case of collective amnesia ever documented." Vance stood, pacing between the holographic displays. Each one showed another piece of the puzzle: technological signatures, genetic markers, linguistic evolution, cultural integration. Taken individually, they could be dismissed as coincidences or contamination. Together, they painted a picture that would fundamentally rewrite galactic history. "The question is," she said, "how do I present this without sounding like a conspiracy theorist? May I suggest avoiding the phrase secret human shadow colonies? Academic committees tend to respond poorly to terminology that sounds like bad fiction." "Point taken." Vance moved to her final display, a detailed presentation outline that would either revolutionize xenoarchaeology or end her career spectacularly. "What's the probability that the Historical Preservation Committee will accept this evidence?" "Statistically insignificant. However, the probability that they'll be forced to accept it when confronted with undeniable proof approaches unity." "Undeniable proof?" "I've been running simulations on the artifact response patterns. If my calculations are correct, you won't need to convince them of anything. The artifacts themselves will do the convincing." Vance felt that familiar spark of anticipation that came with approaching a major discovery. "Show me." The hologram shifted to display a complex array of resonance patterns and neural interface protocols. Every single ancient alien artifact in the major museum collections should respond to human biometric input. All you need to do is walk up to them and, well, say hello. "You mean all this time? All these supposedly mysterious ancient technologies have been waiting for their original operators to come home?" The implications struck Vance like a meteor impact. Generations of human colonists had spread across the galaxy, integrated so successfully into alien civilizations that they'd essentially vanished from history. Their technology had been left behind, attributed to mysterious precursors, while their descendants lived ordinary lives as naturalized citizens of a dozen different species. "Felix," she said slowly, "remind me to never underestimate human ingenuity again. I'll add it to your daily affirmation protocols. Right after, remember to eat and try not to insult entire academic institutions." Vance laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the cramped laboratory. Outside, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the revolution about to unfold in the sterile committee rooms and dusty archives of galactic academia. Next week's presentation wasn't going to be about convincing anyone of anything. It was going to be about watching centuries of established dogma crumble in real time. She almost felt sorry for Zekthuran. Almost. The emergency assembly chamber of the Galactic Historical Preservation Committee looked like it had been designed by someone who believed intimidation was the highest form of architecture. Vance stood at the center of a circular amphitheater where 43 of the galaxy's most distinguished historical scholars arranged themselves in ascending tiers, like judges at the universe's most pedantic tribunal. Committee chair. Threndak's 6 eyes focused on her with the intensity of targeting systems. The Kalthoran's reputation for destroying academic careers preceded him like the bow wave of a starship. Dr. Vance, your request for an emergency historical review is unprecedented. You claim to possess evidence that will fundamentally alter our understanding of galactic development patterns. This committee hopes your documentation justifies disrupting our scheduled proceedings. Oh, it will, Vance replied, activating her portable holographic array. The first image materialized above the chamber floor, a detailed schematic of the Helix Nebula artifact that had puzzled nanoarchaeologists for 3 centuries. Professor Zektharan shifted in his allocated seating section, mandibles clicking with barely controlled irritation. Committee Chair, we've already heard Dr. Vance's theories regarding these artifacts. Her speculation about human involvement lacks substantive evidence and contradicts established chronological frameworks. Does it? Vance asked, approaching the hovering hologram. Committee members, I present Exhibit A, the resonance matrices of the Helix Nebula sites. She gestured, and the artifact began to rotate, revealing its complex internal structure. Note the interface points designed specifically for 10-digit manipulation arrays. The quantum processing cores calibrated to human neural frequency ranges, the power systems that activate exclusively through human biometric contact. Curator Velnash of the Preservation Archives leaned forward, her tentacles writhing with what might have been curiosity or distress. Dr. Vance, you're suggesting these ancient technologies were designed by humans. The temporal inconsistencies alone make such claims impossible. Temporal inconsistencies assume we know when humans first achieved interstellar capability, Vance countered. What if our assumptions about human expansion chronology are wrong? She activated the next exhibit, a 3-dimensional map showing human genetic signatures discovered across 47 star systems, all predating official colonization records by centuries. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft hum of translation matrices working overtime. Impossible, breathed Dr. Korath of the Xenogenetic Institute. These genetic markers would require massive population dispersal over hundreds of years. Exactly, Vance said, which brings us to Exhibit B, the Integration Protocol. The hologram shifted to display documentation from 17 different planetary archives, citizenship records, marriage certificates, property deeds, and employment contracts, all bearing human names, all dating back far beyond official first contact protocols. The Chen family on Rigel 7 didn't arrive as refugees from a failed colony ship, Vance announced. They were descendants of colonial authority engineers who had been living there for 2 centuries. The failed colony ship story was a convenient fiction to explain their presence without admitting that humans had been quietly building infrastructure across the galaxy for generations. Committee Chair, Threndak's primary vocal cords produced a sound like grinding metal. You're asking this committee to believe that humans conducted massive colonization operations without leaving any official records? No, Vance replied. I'm asking you to believe that humans conducted massive colonization operations while simultaneously erasing their official records. There's a difference. She gestured, and the chamber's lighting dimmed as the holographic display expanded to show the committee's own artifact collection. Pieces from the museum basement that had been gathering dust for decades, all of them bearing the distinctive quantum signatures of human technology. But let's move beyond documentation, Vance continued. Let's talk about practical demonstration. Professor Zektharan rose from his seat, exoskeleton rattling with academic outrage. Dr. Vance, this committee will not be subjected to theatrical displays designed to... His words died as Vance approached, the nearest artifact display case. The crystalline matrix inside began to glow with a soft blue light the moment her hand touched the containment field controls. Curious, she said conversationally. According to your own research notes, this particular artifact has never shown any signs of activation. 7 different species have attempted to interface with it over the past 80 years. The glow intensified, and suddenly the chamber was filled with holographic star maps, technical schematics, and what appeared to be navigation protocols, all displaying text in early colonial English. However, Vance continued, stepping away from the case, it seems to work fine for me. The committee members began talking all at once, creating a cacophony that would have impressed a supernova explosion. Threndak's voice cut through the chaos like a plasma cutter. Silence! The chamber fell quiet. Dr. Vance, you will explain this demonstration immediately. Gladly. Vance moved to the next display case. This one contained what the Corvani had designated as the most sophisticated piece of precursor engineering ever discovered. A quantum computational matrix that had resisted all attempts at analysis. The moment Vance's biometric signature registered with its sensors, the device awakened. Streams of data began flowing through the air, creating a 3-dimensional blueprint of something that looked suspiciously like a colonial authority terraforming platform. The explanation is simple, Vance said as the committee members stared in various expressions of shock, awe, and intellectual terror. These aren't mysterious alien artifacts. They're human technology, designed by humans, built by humans, and programmed to respond to human operators. She walked to the 3rd display case. Inside, what the Academic Council had classified as a divine remnant of the first civilization began humming with power before she even reached the controls. Your textbooks, Vance announced, list the Rigel terraforming project as one of the galaxy's great unsolved archaeological mysteries. The technology that transformed 7 barren worlds into garden planets supposedly represents the pinnacle of precursor achievement. The artifact projected a holographic display showing detailed progress reports, engineering specifications, and project completion certificates, all signed by Colonial Authority personnel. Project Director, Amelia Chen, Vance read from the floating text. Chief Engineer, David Park. Environmental Specialist, Sarah Okafor. Hardly mysterious when you know where to look. Professor Zektharin made a sound like a steam valve releasing pressure. This cannot be accurate. Humans lack the technological sophistication to achieve such planetary modification on this scale. Do we? Vance asked, moving to the final artifact in the chamber's collection. Or do we simply lack the institutional memory? The last device activated before she even approached. It, responding to her mere presence in the chamber. It projected a comprehensive database of human colonial activities spanning 6 centuries, complete with shipping manifests, population records, and detailed accounts of integration procedures with local alien populations. The most successful camouflage in galactic history, Vance observed, watching as centuries of hidden human achievement scrolled past in glowing text. Integrate so completely that you disappear. Contribute so effectively to local civilizations that your own origins become irrelevant. Leave behind your technology and let others take credit for your work. Until someone comes along and asks the right questions. The silence that followed was the kind usually associated with vacuum chambers or the moment before supernovas. 43 of the galaxy's most distinguished scholars sat frozen in their seats, watching their carefully constructed understanding of galactic history disintegrate in real time. Committee Chair, Threndak's voice, when he finally spoke, carried the hollow quality of someone whose worldview had just been demolished by empirical evidence. Dr. Vance, he said slowly, what exactly are you asking this committee to do? Vance smiled, gathering her equipment as the artifacts continued to display their revelatory data streams. I'm asking you to do what historians are supposed to do, she replied. Acknowledge the truth, regardless of how inconvenient it might be for your existing theories. And, she added, pausing at the chamber's exit, you might want to start updating those textbooks. The doors sealed behind her, leaving 43 of the galaxy's finest academic minds to contemplate the smoking ruins of their professional certainties. Outside, the universe continued its ancient rotation, indifferent to the fact that its official history had just been rewritten by a human with a holographic projector and an unfortunate tendency toward dramatic timing. 6 months after the emergency assembly chamber incident, which had already entered academic legend as the day the universe got awkward, the galaxy was experiencing what could politely be termed an identity crisis. On Kepler 442b, the Corvani Museum of Ancient Mysteries had quietly renamed itself the Corvani Museum of Human Colonial Engineering. The change happened overnight, along with approximately 3,000 exhibit placards that now bore uncomfortable addendums like actually built by the Chen family, 2847, and previously attributed to mysterious aliens, now confirmed to be Dave's weekend project. Dr. Kestrel Vance stood in the museum's central gallery, watching visitors navigate displays that bore little resemblance to their former incarnations. Where once had stood shrines to unknowable precursor wisdom, now sat practical explanations of terraforming equipment, gravity manipulation tools, and quantum processing systems, all developed by human engineers who had apparently been too busy integrating into local society to bother with proper documentation. The irony is exquisite, observed museum director Ilftar, his serpentine form coiled around a display case that now identified the sacred relic of ultimate power as Emergency Backup Generator, Model K-47, manufactured by Titan Industrial Solutions. For centuries, we worshipped human engineering while simultaneously believing humans incapable of such engineering. Your species does have a talent for compartmentalization, Vance agreed, studying a holographic timeline that now showed human colonial expansion beginning nearly 2 centuries earlier than previously believed. Though you're hardly alone in that regard. The museum's PA system crackled with an announcement in 3 languages. The 2:30 guided tour from mysterious aliens to suburban neighbors, a historical re-evaluation, will begin momentarily in Gallery 7. Through the museum's quantum-transparent walls, Vance could see the cityscape of New Corvinus stretching toward the horizon. Half the architectural achievements that had once been attributed to ancient alien builders now bore small brass plates identifying their actual human architects. The city planning that had puzzled xenobiologists for decades turned out to follow standard colonial authority urban development protocols, modified for local climate conditions. Any word from the Academic Council? Vance asked. Ilftar's translation caller produced what might charitably be called a chuckle. Professor Zektharin submitted his resignation yesterday, apparently discovering that his life's work consisted entirely of misattributing human achievements to fictional aliens proved somewhat damaging to his sense of professional accomplishment. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost? Well, he did spend 3 decades sneering at human capabilities while literally surrounded by examples of human engineering that he couldn't recognize. Vance's personal communicator chimed with an incoming message. The sender identification made her laugh. Dr. Marcus Webb, Department of Xenoarchaeology, Titan University, formerly thought to be extinct recently, reclassified as just really good at paperwork. She opened the message, which contained a single line of text. Found something you'll want to see. Recommend immediate consultation. Also bring coffee. Being rediscovered is exhausting. Duty calls, Vance told Ilftar, heading toward the museum exit. Try not to reclassify any more divine artifacts while I'm gone. No promises. We're still working through the basement collections. Yesterday we discovered that the eternal flame of cosmic wisdom is actually a coffee machine. The journey to Titan University required only a short hyperspace jump, but it felt like traveling through a mirror universe where everything familiar had been subtly rearranged. News feeds scrolled past on the transport's display screens, showing headlines that would have been science fiction 6 months earlier. Rigel terraforming mystery solved. Local family takes credit after 200 years. Galactic Historical Society announces massive rewrite project. Opinion? Maybe we should have asked more questions about those ancient aliens. Dr. Marcus Webb met her at the university's main archaeological laboratory, a facility that had once been dedicated to studying mysterious precursor artifacts, and was now attempting to catalog the extensive human colonial infrastructure that had been hiding in plain sight across 17 star systems. Kestrel, Webb said, embracing her with the enthusiasm of someone who had recently been resurrected from historical non-existence. Thank you for proving I wasn't crazy all these years. Thank you for keeping detailed records that everyone else ignored, she replied, looking around the laboratory. The walls were covered with charts, maps, and genealogical trees showing the complex web of human settlement and integration patterns across the galaxy. I have something to show you, Webb said, leading her to a central display table. We've been tracking down the original Colonial Authority archives, the ones that somehow got lost during the Great Integration Project. The holographic display activated, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with human settlement patterns highlighted in blue. The scope was breathtaking. Hundreds of colonies, thousands of integration sites, entire civilizations that had unknowingly absorbed human populations and technology. The scale is magnificent, Webb continued. Your species didn't just colonize the galaxy, you colonized it so thoroughly that you became invisible, the ultimate evolutionary camouflage. Vance studied the data streams flowing around the holographic map. What happened to the coordination? Someone had to be managing this integration project. That's the beautiful part, Webb said, highlighting a section of the display. There was no central coordination. It was entirely organic. Human colonies would establish themselves, integrate with local populations, contribute their technology to local development, and then forget. Within 3 generations, the descendants considered themselves native to their adopted worlds. Successful integration through cultural amnesia. Precisely. And the technology? Well, who cares where the gravity generators came from as long as they work? Who needs to remember that the quantum communication networks were designed by humans when they're functioning perfectly well under alien management? The display shifted to show a timeline of human technological contributions, stretching back 6 centuries. Terraforming platforms, faster-than-light communication arrays, quantum processing systems, gravity manipulation devices, all quietly developed by human engineers and seamlessly adopted by alien civilizations who attributed them to mysterious ancient builders. The most successful conspiracy in galactic history, Vance mused, was one where the conspirators forgot they were conspirating. Webb laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the laboratory. Your species managed to achieve galactic dominance through the simple expedient of being so helpful that everyone forgot you were there. And now? Now we're in the awkward position of having to reintroduce ourselves to our own descendants. Webb highlighted another section of the map. Half the human populations in the galaxy have been living as naturalized aliens for so long that they've forgotten their own species' identity. The other half never knew it in the first place. Vance considered the implications. So we're not just rewriting galactic history, we're rediscovering human history. The ultimate archaeological project, excavating your own civilization from the places where it successfully camouflaged itself. The laboratory's main screen activated, displaying an incoming communication from the Galactic Historical Preservation Committee. Committee Chair, Threndak's image appeared, his 6 eyes focused with the intensity of someone who had spent months revising fundamental assumptions about the universe. "Dr. Vance," Threndak said, his voice carrying the weight of institutional exhaustion, "the committee has completed its preliminary review of the evidence you presented. We are prepared to acknowledge that significant portions of our historical records require extensive revision." "How extensive?" Vance asked. "Approximately 73% of what we previously attributed to mysterious ancient civilizations can now be traced to human colonial activity. The committee has voted to establish a new department of human archaeological recovery, with you as its founding director. And Professor Zektharan has accepted a position teaching basic xenoarchaeological methodology to first-year students. His expertise in being completely wrong about fundamental assumptions may prove valuable in preventing future academic disasters." After the communication ended, Vance stood quietly in the laboratory, surrounded by the evidence of humanity's greatest achievement, becoming so successfully integrated into the galactic community that they had essentially erased themselves from existence. "You know what the really amusing part is?" Webb said, breaking the silence. "What's that?" "Somewhere out there's probably another species doing exactly the same thing, integrating so completely that they become invisible, contributing so effectively that they disappear into the background." Vance smiled, looking out through the laboratory's transparent walls at the stars beyond. "And someday, some curious archaeologist will stumble across their artifacts and wonder why nobody ever noticed the obvious." "The galaxy," she added, "is a very large place. Plenty of room for everyone to hide in plain sight." Outside, the universe continued its ancient dance, indifferent to the fact that one of its most successful species had just finished the remarkable feat of rediscovering itself. Somewhere among those distant stars, other integration projects were undoubtedly proceeding according to plan. Other civilizations were quietly disappearing into the comfortable anonymity of successful assimilation. The most human thing of all, perhaps, was that they had managed to surprise themselves.